Hey everyone, and I hope all of you are doing well. So in this episode we are going to focus on displaying nicer messages to our clients. So if you remember from the previous episode, we were able to display some errors when we filled in wrong information when we tried to register some users. But it totally doesn't make sense to display the errors on the server side. So besides, we want to look for a way to display those errors to our clients so they can understand what they have to fix in order to register to that website successfully. So let's go ahead and see how we can do this. Alright, so if you remember, this was the line that was responsible to display some errors within the terminal of our web server. Now to change this to being displayed on our HTML templates, Flask gives us a built-in function that is called Flash, and this is basically a function that will allow us to display all the given information inside our HTML templates. So it will be as easy as changing this print to Flash, and for sure this is a built-in function that we should import in our first lines over here. So we should type in here Flash. So we are importing that built-in function. And the way that we are going to do that is by first flashing some messages, and then we are going to go inside our HTML templates and we are going to use a built-in function that is called get flashed messages. And what is so beautiful with the get flashed messages, it will allow us to gather all the flashed messages as the function says, okay? But we are going to do that on our template with Jinja syntax. So it is not quite necessary to import it over here. I just wanted to show you the function that we will be using. So once I have done that, then I can basically go to our template and use that built-in get flashed messages. So it will be as easy as going to our templates and going inside our base.html, and we actually want to think of an area where it could be nice to display those kind of flashed messages. Now the reason we don't do this in our register.html, it is because we want to gain the ability to display flashed messages for all of our templates. So it doesn't make sense to call the get flashed messages in a specific template. Besides, it totally makes sense to call it from our base.html. So we will go right under our navigation bar and we will display the flashed messages right before our block content. So I will just go here and I will use the Jinja syntax to grab the flashed messages. Now the way that we are going to do that is by context manager. So it will be with messages equals to get flashed, like that, messages, and then we will close this function and we will pass in an argument that is going to look quite weird for you in the first look, but we will explain in a second. And I'm going to pass in here with categories equals to true. Now the reason that we are going to do this, it is because in the future we are going to add certain categories for the different messages that we want to display. So the important point here is to understand that not only we can display some errors, but we can also display regular information or success messages, and we are going to see how we are going to do that in a few minutes. Now I just realized that I implemented the variable block, and with the get flashed messages, it expects for the block code. So I will change the inner curly brackets to parentheses, and I mean percentage signs, and this should be great. Now we should close this with end with like that. Now inside this block of code, we also want to check if there are going to be any messages when each page loads. So we can do that by easily saying, so I will call the block code again and I will say if messages, and I will close this up by saying end if, and I will fix the indentation in here. So what we got until now is a messages variable that is trying to grab all the flashed messages. And then later on, we are also verifying that the messages is not none. So it is quite important to do that because we probably want to check if our messages are filled with some flashed message from our route. Now, when we reach this situation, it quite makes sense to iterate over the messages if it is not none. Because if you remember, in some cases we could have more than one messages that we want to display to our users. So this is why right inside our if statement in here, we are going to say, and we will call the block code again, and we will type in for message in messages. And then we will close this up by saying and for. And now this is the actual area where we want to display some nice HTML output to display the different messages to our users. So I will start by displaying this message in a very simple p tag. So it will be just easily p, and then we will say message inside a variable block. So it will be message in here. And then later on we are going to give this a little bit nicer customization, but we will do that in a few minutes. Now we can go to our website and check if this works properly. So if you remember, in our routes.py we actually flashing a message to our clients. So this should be fine by only verifying that our website is up and running, and actually try to go back to home and try to register again to our website. So I will type in some wrong information in here and let's see if everything works properly. So we will try to create account, and then you can see that we receive those errors with the actual errors that we had when we try to create account. Now if we zoom in here a little bit, we could see that we receive the output as Python tuples. So what that means? It means that our get flashed messages divides in the output into two important things. And the first one is the category, and the second one is the actual message. So what that means? It means that we can change our iteration a little bit to make it look even nicer. So we could go back to our PyCharm, and actually let's go to our base.html again. And we could add in here one more variable, so we could unpack the results of what is inside the messages. So I will say category, and then we will add a comma, and then we will only display the message itself. And once I do this, then we can basically try to refresh it and click actually continue, and then we can see that the result is quite different. Okay, so this could be one way that you could display different messages to your users, but we probably want to give the user a little bit nice display to those kind of messages, so the user could be aware if this is an error message or just an information message or a success message or something like that. And we probably want to design it a little bit more colored rather than just displaying a blank white text. So the way that we are going to do that is by going back to our PyCharm and adding in here some categories to our flashed message. So if you remember, the get flashed messages from the base.html are also responsible to grab the categories because we passed in this statement with categories equals to true. So what that means? It means that this grabs the categories as well. So let's give our messages a category. Okay, so we could go back here and we could say category equals to danger. And there's actually a great reason why I typed in here danger, and you will see that just in a second. Okay, so once I have done that, then I should re-customize this line in here to display a nicer message. So the way that we are going to do that is by writing in some pure HTML code to display a nice message, and also doing that with pulling some classes from the bootstrap framework that we have imported in the very beginning of this tutorial. So I will start by saying div, and I will continue by typing the class, and I will say alert, and then I will also say alert dash, and then here I will pass in the category that we send from our route. Now here is the reason why I wrote danger. It is because alert dash danger is going to pull the bootstrap class that its name is alert dash danger, and that is responsible to display a red looking message, so our users could understand that this is basically an error and something went wrong. And inside those div tags, I'm going to continue on by typing here button. So this is going to be like a wide paragraph where the users could have the option to close the different alerts. So I will continue giving here some more HTML attributes very quick. So I will say by type equals button, and I will also say class equals to m1-2, and I will also say mb-1, and then I will type in here close. So those are some bootstrap classes that I memorized that will be responsible to just display it nicer. So I don't want to waste a lot of time explaining what each class does. And I will also say here data-dismiss equals to alert, and then I will also say area label equals to close. So I'm going to explain some of the attributes when we see the actual results, and this will totally make sense for you. So I will go back to here, and I will continue typing inside, sorry about that, and I will continue typing inside our button the message that we want to display. So I will call here the span tag, and I will type in here area hidden equals to true. And inside our span, I am going to type in some convention characters that the HTML could understand that I'm referring to an X icon. So I want to show like an X close button like we have here in our PyCharm. This is the exact symbol that I want to refer to. So I can just say times and then colon, semicolon like that. So once I have done that, let's see the results and let's see the logic behind this HTML code. Okay, so let's go here and let's actually put the PyCharm in the left pane and our website in here. So it will totally make sense to see those together. So I will make the font a little bit smaller and I will continue on from here. So now I can zoom out our website and I can go to our homepage and try to register back again. And I will again dismiss some information by purpose. So I will say JSC4 and I will type in some passwords. And once I click on create account, then we don't see the message, and that is because I did not insert the message itself anywhere. But you can already see the X symbol that I was talking about, and if I click on that, then it closes. So I will just go inside our button here, and I will just call the message by only calling the variable block and pass in message. And actually I think this should be out of our button here, so I will move this right under the closure of the button tag. Okay, so once I have done that, let's test the results again. So I will go and try to register, and I will type in a valid email, but only I will not create proper password. So I will just type in here some random characters and click on create account. And then you can see that we see a nice looking error, and our clients could really understand that we have something wrong, and we also have the option to close this button by clicking on the X right there. Now the attribute of data dismiss and area label and area hidden equals true are what responsible to configure what the X symbol should do when we click on it, but I don't want to get into much complex detail about HTML and JavaScript and some more further information that is quite not relevant for now. Alright everyone, so I hope you understood the entire topic of how we can display nicer flashed messages to our clients. Now there is going to be one more thing that we want to solve about this registration form. Now I will try to create a user with a username that is already existing on our database. So if you remember, in the previous actions that I have completed in this tutorial, I created already a user with name of JSC. Now, if we try to create a user with an existing username, let's see the results. Okay, so let's go ahead and try to pass in some valid email and actually a valid password as well. And if I click here, then you can see that it leads us to an error where it says that the unique constraint failed. Now, I know it jumped down here and this is actually referring to actual error, but this is the error that I want to talk about. So unique constraint failed means that we tried to insert a user row to that item table that we have, and then it failed because we already have a username with the name of JSC. So we probably want to avoid display such a message to our users. One, this doesn't look nice, and two, we probably don't want to show our bugs and our code problems to the users. So the way that we can overcome this is by easily catching this error a lot earlier before it leads to that SQ Alchemy integrity error. So let's see how we can do that in PyCharm. Okay, so I will basically open back our PyCharm here, and you can see that I'm already inside our forms.py, and there is a great reason for that. Now in here we want to write validation that is going to check if the attempted user from the registration form is existing or not. And then we can catch up this unique error before it leads to the error from the SQL Alchemy itself. So that way we will have a validation error, and then we will be able to display to our users this nice red colored error message that we saw previously. Let's go ahead and do this. And I will go inside the Flask form class here, I mean the register form class, and I will type in some function which I'm going to name validate username. And I'm going to receive the self for sure, and I also want to receive one more parameter, and we will name it username underscore to underscore check. Okay, so we are checking if the given username is already existing in our database. And once we have done that, then we want to query our user model to check if this username to check is already existing or not. So I will go up top here and I will import our model, and it will be from market.models import user. And I will go down here a 2 lines so we will have a cleaner look. And I will continue inside our validate username function, and I will say user equals to user dot query dot filter underscore by, and we want to filter the user object by username equals to username to check. And what I'm doing by writing this line, I'm basically asking our entire user object if there is a user with the username to check that is arriving from the registration form. And once I do that, then you can remember from the previous sessions of this tutorial that this entire expression returns us an object. And in order to access the first object of it, then we should go and type in first like that. Okay, so if this user object is filled in with some information, meaning that this entire statement returns an object, then this means that there is already a user with that username existing in the database. So we probably want to go ahead and type in a conditional like if user. So I'm checking if the user is not none, and in here I want to raise a validation error. So it will be raise validation error, and I will just type in a message like username already exists, please try a different username. And you could pay attention that this gives us an error in here because we should import this built-in exception class from that line. So I will say validation error right there. Okay, so there is one more thing that I bet that confuses you in that case. So we were able to write a nice block of code in here that is basically verifying that the user is not exist, and then we raise an error if there is actually a user with the username that he tries to create. Now you're probably asking yourself how this validate underscore username is going to be executed in somewhere in our project. Now in that case, what is so special with the validators library is that you are allowed to create certain functions in very specific usernames, and then the Flask form class is going to take care of the rest. So by writing validate underscore username like that, then what Flask form is going to do, it is going to search for all the functions that are starting with the prefix of validate underscore, and then later on it is going to check for the next name after the underscore, and then it is going to search if there is even a field with that given name, and we happen to have this username field. So this way our Flask form class that we inherit from will know to validate underscore username because we have a field with the username right here. So it is quite important to understand why I named this function that way. Okay, so the Flask form could understand that we are going to execute a validation for the username itself. And we could also do that with our validate email address. So we probably want to check if there is an email address that is already existing if our users are trying to create an account with an existing email address. So we could do the exact same thing by going down here and typing in validate underscore, and here we want to give the email address as our function name. So I will go by again saying email address to check, and then we will go inside our function and we will continue on by saying email address equals to user.query.filter underscore by, and we will try to filter by email address equals to email address to check, and we have to execute that dot first in here again, and then we can say if email address, then we can raise a validation error, and then we could type in email address already exists, please try a different email address. Okay, so there is a great reason that I'm not copying and pasting, because as long as I am doing that, then you are practicing how you can write such a complex code when it comes to sometimes raise errors and conditionals and then functions with a very unique name. So this is why I did not copy and paste. And I think this should be enough to see the actual results. So I will basically go to our web. You know what? Let's verify that our website is running, and it is not. So let's execute python run.py. And then you can see that our website is up back again. And now I can try to refresh our page. And let's actually go to home. And now we can try to go back to register and try to create some account and see the results of that. And in here, let's try to create again an account with an existing username, but not with an existing email address. So I will give here an email address like that, and I will type in correct passwords. And if we click on create account, then we see an error again. So probably something that we missed with writing the validations. So I think we see this unsupported type when we creating the validation. So, and let's actually have a look if our validation is proper or not. So it is a great idea to go here and user equals to user query filter by, and then we pass in this username to check. But I think that this should be a little bit different, so I might see what is going on here. Now, if you remember from our routes.py, we used to access our actual fields with accessing the data attribute. So I think this is what we have to pass in here to query our users. So this is just the same approach. So in here we create the users with grabbing the .data, and we should do that in our forms.py as well. So I will go here and I will say .data in here, and I will do the same in our user query filter in the validate username. So I will type in .data, and I think this should be enough to test it out back again, because we probably don't want to refer to actual object of the username to check. We want to refer to that .data. So let's go back to here and test the results of that. So I will try to register back again, and I will type in again a username that is already exists, and we will change the email a little bit and the password like that. And now if we click on create account, then you can see that we receive an alert besides receiving a complex error. So our users could be notified with that kind of unique error as well. And you can see the message. There was an error with creating a username already exists. Please try a different username, and that is happened to be the error that we have raised by ourselves. Now, if we want to test this with the email address as well, then we can go ahead and do that. So if I remember correctly, then we had an email with jsc@jsc.com. So this should fail. And if I click on the same password and try to create a new account, then you can see that our validation error about the email address is also very, very fine. And I think that this is beyond than enough to really have a very stable registration form for our clients. Okay everyone, I know this was a lot of information to sink in, but I hope that you understood everything correctly, and mainly the second part of this episode. I know this could be complex and sometimes very, very hard to understand, but just remember that we try to catch the exception of that unique thing when our users will try to create an account. We probably want to catch it before the SQL Alchemy error, and we can do that by writing such a function right inside our register form. So I really hope that you will have some positive feedback to that video, and I hope to see you in my next episode as well. Don't forget to click on the thumbs up button if you like this video, and also consider subscribing to my channel. I will see you in my future uploads.